Okay, just so you know, I am extremely chill when it comes to public speaking. I don't care about being interrupted, as she already said, so if you ever have questions or comments, just raise your hand so we can make sure we get it on mic and on camera and everything. But yeah, feel free to interrupt me, it's no big deal. Okay, so let's start off with, who am I? She just gave us a little brief introduction. I'm a communications major. I say I'm a communications major because I love to talk. In fact, if you get me in the right mood, I will absolutely not shut up and go on for a really long time. Bit of a rambler. I'm also particularly obsessed with intercultural communication and learning foreign languages. It's a deep passion of mine that I've had for a very long time. I'm also often in positions of leadership. This is something I actually personally enjoy, and I find it extremely fulfilling to be in positions of leadership all the time. I have a giant family, let me tell you. Both of my parents divorced and remarried, which means I have 4 different giant sets of family, so Christmas and Thanksgiving is crazy. I also have a lot of friends. This actually isn't showing all the pictures, but I have so many friends. Everybody knows me. But in fall 2017, I was having a tough time. I felt isolated. I didn't feel connected to anyone anymore. I felt like a failure. Now, I want to iterate this. No one has ever called me a failure. Not my family, not my friends. I am the only one who has ever considered myself a failure. And this went to a bit of an extreme. During the fall semester, I can't say specifically the day, I thought I should just end it. I got to the point where I opened up a bottle of pills. I had a lot of pills because I'm clumsy. I'm always running into things and hurting myself. So this was from a shoulder injury when I worked at the factory that I had unintentionally self-inflicted, and I had the pills left over from it because I don't like to take pills. But they were there. So I got as far as starting to open the lid before I stopped myself. I put the bottle down and I called my best friend of 8 years and I said, hey, I need some help. I'm not okay. And I was able to build a support structure that helped me get through that period of isolation and that feeling like a failure, and I still struggle with it sometimes, but I'm able to get through it because I built up that network. But this got me thinking, why did all of this happen? Why did I think that way? And so I ended up doing some research. The first thing that I came across was how we discuss suicide in general. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the topic has a bit of a stigma. For example, we say commit suicide. What else do we commit? We commit crimes. So is suicide a crime? I mean, in some religions it is, in a lot of religions it is. But this adds to the social stigma, saying commit suicide, because we commit crimes, which means it's inherently bad. The other reasons that I've accumulated through personal experience and research of why suicide is such a stigma in our society is firstly, and most obviously, it involves death. We don't like talking about death. I think it scares a lot of people. It also goes against our nature as human beings, which goes into the second point, which taking our own life is very socially deviant. It goes against all of our base survival instincts. Why would we want to kill ourselves when our core makes us do things to live? It makes almost no sense. And then again, as I already stated, many religions condemn the act of suicide. So how can we fix this social stigmata? We can talk about it. This is really, really simple solution. Just be open, be brave, talk about it. It's okay to talk about. Nothing bad is going to happen from putting these thoughts in the air. Although that is a very strongly thought ideal that we have in our culture, is that if we talk about it and we verbalize the thoughts, they're going to come into action, but that's not really the case. Also, we should stop using the verbiage commit towards suicide. There's a lot of other ways you could say it. I use complete suicide or want to complete suicide instead of commit. It's a very subtle way to try and change this stigma. And of course, whenever you're talking about this, even if someone put up a suicide meme and you're talking about your group of friends, be mindful of your vocabulary. You don't know what your friends are thinking. You want to be able to, quote unquote, be there for them. So don't use condemning vocabulary when you're discussing it. It'll help open up the air a little bit more and make the stigma maybe break away. So let's talk about suicidal intent, which was the second part of my research. How do we handle suicide intent when it is expressed? Well, before we can actually cover this, we need to consider the methods of communication of intent. There's direct verbal, indirect verbal, direct nonverbal, and indirect nonverbal. I know it's a lot. That's a lot of new vernacular for most of you, especially if you're not in the comm discipline. Direct verbal is the most obvious one, where you say, I think I want to kill myself, or I want to die. That's when you're being extremely direct. The indirect is more along the lines of, you know, I don't see a way out of this. This situation, it's not fixable. I can't fix this. The direct nonverbal is when they are purposefully doing things that are clearly showing their intent, such as making a will when you're only 20 years old and you're not terminally ill. That's a sign. But you leave it open on your laptop and out so people can see. That would be a strong example of direct nonverbal. And then indirect nonverbal, this could be something as simple as deleting all of your social media accounts. You know, someone stops talking. They just stop talking entirely. You cut yourself off. Now that we've looked at the communication of intent, we actually need to look at the levels of intent. This is something I actually found quite interesting during my research, because I had not considered the different levels of suicidal intent before. But there's gesture, ambivalent, and serious. Those are the general ones that I seem to come across the different articles that I read. Gesture means that you don't actually want to die. This is more of the cry for help type situation, where you're doing things that is going to draw attention to you because you want to fix the situation you're in, but you don't see another way to do it. They often use low-risk low-risk methods, such as cutting themselves or poison, ones where they might die, but it's not super likely that they will. Also, and this is what I found particularly interesting, most of the times in gesture intent, they don't use direct verbal communication to say, I want to die. They use indirect. I find that really interesting, because they're the ones who don't actually usually want to die, yet they're not going to be the one who's going to tell you, I want to die. It's an interesting contradiction. Ambivalent. This is a person who is indifferent. That means they are going into the act to complete suicide or potentially complete suicide without caring about whether they survive or not. So they're not necessarily saying, I want to die, but they also don't care if they do not survive. They will use low risk and somewhat high risk, such as jumping off of a bridge, but they will not use the highest risk ones, such as hanging or using a weapon such as a gun. They won't use firearms. They'll usually do the gesture methods as well, such as taking too many pills and of cutting themselves. And then, of course, that leaves serious. The serious suicidal intent means that they intend to die 100%. They don't want to be talked out of it. That's what they want. These really high-risk methods, they're the ones who use the firearms. They jump off bridges. They stay away from the low-risk methods. And they often use the direct communication method because usually they're going to come out and say goodbye. They're going to come out and say goodbye to you, and that's, again, something really interesting to me because I feel like that's super contradictory. So, now I'm going to test you on what you just learned. Let's see how much you were paying attention. Here we have Becky and Brian. As you can see, Becky has started saying she can't see a way out of the current situation. She seems to be increasingly drained in general, displays loss of interest in things that had made her happy previously. She's just wandering around. You notice she's working on a will. She's left it open for you to see. When you ask her about it, she says that it's just in case something were to happen to her. What forms of communication are being displayed here? Anybody want to answer?
Indirect verbal.
Good. There's another one. Do you know what it is?
Direct nonverbal.
Yes, that's right. Good job. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing with Brian. Brian tells you he wants to die. A few days later, you realize he has deleted all of his social media accounts. You run into another friend of his and realize he hasn't spoken to either of you in weeks. This is, again, two other forms of communication. Which ones are they?
Direct verbal.
Correct.
Indirect nonverbal.
Yes, that's right. Good job, guys. Okay, so you want to help Becky and Brian, but how do you do it? This is difficult because statistically, at least in most of the research I had read, when someone showed these signs of suicidal intent, the main thing people would do, their significant others and friends, would ignore it. They would ignore it and hope that it would go away because they're afraid that if they talked about it, it would bring the idea to life, as I've already discussed a little bit. But here's the problem.
I'm sorry, back up a minute. It just sounds to me like Becky and Brian need to just get up, dust themselves off, and get over it.
That's not really a good method. Anyway, if you started coughing up blood, would you ignore it and just assume that you're going to be okay?
Okay, that's a ridiculous analogy. I mean, you're no expert, so why should we listen to you about this anyway?
I've had a lot of experience with this. I've talked friends down from suicide before.
Anyway. Were they your age? Because you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you.
Yes, well, as already said, rather than ignore the intent, we should try and confront it in a non-abrasive way. So you can say very, very non-abrasively, don't like super confront them about like, I think you're suicidal. Like, no, that's not a beneficial way to do this. Just say, I've noticed that you've been behaving differently lately. Are you all right? Or just talk in general. Offer to go with them to see someone if you think they need help, because oftentimes they're scared to go. And simply being there is not helpful. So what do I mean by being there? Simply being there, saying, hey, I'm here when you want to talk. That's not going to help them in most cases. You need to make them talk about it, but try and do it in a non-abrasive way. It's extremely difficult, I know, but the best way to help them is to make them be direct. What you do not want to say when someone expresses intent. Why? You have so much to live for. That's selfish of you. Don't talk like that. But what about your family? These are just some examples of what comes out usually when people discuss suicidal thoughts or suicidal intent. But saying these in general will invoke guilt. It will make them clam up. They won't talk about it again. So if they are making a suicide plan, you're not going to be let in on it. That's problematic. And now, I want to introduce our next speaker. This is Shannon LeClaire Ron.
Thank you. I see a few confused faces. I see some smiles. Bear with me as I change over to my slides. Okay. Now, my name is Shannon LeClaire Ron. I graduated from the psychology program in May, and I am now a graduate student and a graduate assistant, and I am loving every experience, every opportunity I have. And one of the things that I really wanted to do today is emphasize a few things about language, bullying, and suicide. And yes, that event did just happen, and obviously it was prearranged for dramatic effect. Now, what is problematic about those statements? She briefly touched upon it a little bit. Would you say they were kind, supportive, understanding? No. Pretty much the opposite, weren't they? It was difficult to even sit there and say them, I have to admit. I wasn't sure I could do that. A lot of people will make statements that are intended to be helpful. It is something they want to say to encourage you, to give you the opportunity to understand what you do have. Unfortunately, those approaches that they use, like some of those comments on our slides, are not always helpful. And in some cases, people can be quite cruel. For example, if someone posts on Facebook that they are contemplating suicide, a common response, unfortunately, is to encourage that person to continue with their plan. So that is why I wanted to really have you think about what you were experiencing as I was heckling her. What crossed your mind when I first started making those awful comments? Go ahead.
Where's security at?
Anybody else want to just, duct tape my mouth shut?
Yeah, I just felt like really shocked because I was like, why would you really say that and out in this public and say something like, because that just makes it parents to feel, on the spot and stuff. I just thought that was really rude. And that makes the situation worse.
That is so true. Anyone else? We'll try and get the microphone over here.
As someone that's older, I think it's really easy to think, why would a young person have a problem that's that terrible? But as a 20-something, I can absolutely see that you would be in that mindset. But as you're looking on someone, usually they're senior, it's hard to see or take their problems that seriously.
That's a great point, because someone that's older might have a completely different perspective. They have more experience. When I was back in high school, some of the events that happened seemed like the end of the world. And now, as a college student, I'm looking back at some of them and laughing. But unfortunately, people in that moment that are in crisis can't always appreciate that fact. Now, what did you feel emotionally as I was heckling her? There's a person back there.
So as a mom, I was ready to get up and remove you.
Okay.
I was. It was just absolutely unacceptable.
Well, I appreciate you tolerating it so we could use this as an example. I do.
I said as a mom.
Yes.
My defense mama bear mechanism just kicked in, and especially as someone who is also on staff at this university to protect our students, not knowing who you were, I was ready, just everything in me was ready to get up.
And that ties into the next question.
She sitting beside me said, "This is planned," because she could see it in my
Well, thank you for rescuing me and letting her know it was pre-planned. I appreciate it. But that does tie into my next question, your comments. What would you have wanted to do if you could? Oh, there's someone behind you.
I would, like her, I'm not a mom, but I was just kind of upset too because I wanted to kind of say something. It's that was kind of rude and you shouldn't do that. It's I thought it was kind of ready to do something about it. So.
And it's right there.
I know a lot of times we feel like we have to have the right answer, and so when you were telling her, well, what do you know? You're young. Like, how would you know how to talk somebody down? And it's like, I wanted to defend her. You know, I know Jenny as a person, and I know the things that she's been through and what she's capable of, and so I also about jumped out of this chair and was like, are we going to talk about this?
Now, what prevented you from speaking out? Just think for a moment about what kept you, what made you hold back. Were you just not sure how to handle it? Were you not sure how your input would be received if you did address it at the moment? Okay, great. I'm glad that you are silent there because that leads me to my topic today. I wanted to discuss the domino effect of bullying and suicide. I think it's very important to understand that there has been no direct link established between the bullying and suicide. There are many, many factors that contribute to suicidality. How many of you have ever set up dominoes on the end and then knocked them all over? Excellent. In fact, there's some really great YouTubes, if you're ever bored, with thousands of dominoes. But that's kind of the situation here. Bullying might be one of the dominoes that is knocked over, but it knocks over the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and way at the end may be the suicidal behavior or suicidal thoughts. There are different types of bullying. School bullying is the one that most older people probably remember. And I say older, I mean not a college student. Because some of us actually remember a time when the internet did not exist. There were no tweets. There was not Snapchat or Instagram or any of the other things that you probably use and I don't even know about. School bullying is defined as the intentional and aggressive behaviors, often involving a power differential, which occur on school grounds. It usually involves repetitive patterns of abuse, starting with verbal abuse, and then escalating in frequency and severity. And in those moments when someone's being bullied, they only have seconds to respond. They don't know how they'll respond. They may be taken aback because the bullying happens so quickly. And just as you may have felt uncomfortable speaking up today, the bystanders who are watching the bullying may not know how to respond when they see the bullying occur. Now, cyberbullying is something I'm sure you've heard a lot about. The cyberbullies tend to seek recognition and power, whereas the person being bullied just wants to escape that. They want safety, sanctuary. And as I said, the bystander may not know how to act. They may not know what will happen if they do speak out, and so they just try and remain invisible in many cases. Cyberbullying is defined as the use of texts, emails, social media, and other internet sources to harass, bully, threaten, or socially exclude others. It's more pervasive today than actual school bullying. And the lack of face-to-face contact really seems to spur on or embolden the bullies. And unfortunately, there's a lot less control for the person being bullied with cyberbullying than the schoolyard bullying. Now, some of the things that have been associated with school and cyberbullying or may result from bullying include poor attendance and academic performance, self-injurious behaviors, the development of depression or anxiety, feelings of powerlessness, worthlessness, hopelessness, and it is the culmination of this variety of factors that may lead to the risk of suicide. Interestingly, I read an article that said if someone is depressed, feeling hopeless, contemplating suicide, but has not made a clear plan, they are more likely to receive help for the bullying than someone who has already formed a plan, has the means and the method to continue with their suicide plan. So that is why early intervention for bullying and depression and anxiety and all of these other symptoms is crucial. So what can we do? A lot of it is already being done, fortunately. We're trying to educate parents, students, teachers, staff members, the community at large, so that all of the people know that bullying isn't just schoolyard pranks anymore. It goes far beyond that. People can be harassed on a daily basis, hundreds of times through various forms of social media, and even on the schoolyard. We need to discuss, same with suicide, discuss the issue openly. Ask your kids, are you being bullied? Even tougher might be, have you ever bullied someone else? And work on forming rules and policies on how to handle bullying within school. Unfortunately, because of the technology, laws are not up to date with technology. So encourage lawmakers to get involved and to institute laws against cyberbullying if your state doesn't have them. Also, many people want to provide support for the person being bullied and just punish the person doing the bullying. Unfortunately, bullying is often a symptom of a larger problem. So the people that are doing the bullying also need help. Putting support services in place for the bullies and those being bullied, as well as open conversations and great policies to address the issues in schools, may help reduce this crisis we have of bullying. Now, some of the demeaning statements that are commonly start bullying behavior. Now, I'm sure these are probably rather mild than what might be used on a playground, especially with older children, but it would be inappropriate to include swear words or threats. But I wanted to give you an idea of some of the things kids have come to me in the past about. Now, what do you think those would do over time to a person after they've heard them over and over, whether on the school ground, chats, Twitter, just this all-encompassing barrage of horrible comments? How do you think someone would be impacted by that? Go ahead.
Those types of things, I think that they start to become a part of somebody's identity, like they start to really believe that kind of thing, whether, well, obviously it's not true, it doesn't go that way, but I don't know, after hearing that a number of times, I think that they really start to identify it, identify with it, which is very important.
Great points. Anyone else? All right. Now, would you ever let someone speak to you this way on a regular basis? I see some heads nodding no, absolutely not. All right. Now, would you speak to someone else this way? Do you find it harmful or positive to speak to someone this way? Harmful. Mm-hmm. Well, then why would someone speak to themselves that way? Have you ever made a mistake or spoken with someone and said something you shouldn't and walked away from that conversation beating yourself up? Is there anyone that, I tend to be a perfectionist. I don't like making mistakes. But mistakes are a part of life. So a lot of people bully themselves without realizing it.
I feel like with those statements, like people like telling themselves that, I feel like one of the biggest things is like society and things around us, so we kind of compare ourselves. This is what we like to compare ourselves to everybody to see if like we're up to the standards. That doesn't matter. We're all different. I don't have that. So.
Good points. I agree. You do have to build resilience against comments like this and look into yourself for your own self-worth, in my opinion. Go ahead.
Sorry. I think it's also comments, going back to the other slide, it's very persistent in our culture to joke about these kinds of things. So like, I'm reading these and I would never intentionally mean it, but like, oh, you never do anything right, in a like sarcastic type of way, when in reality, like, the words that we say speak life or death, and they have power on the people that we're talking to. And so kind of realizing the language behind joking and being serious about what we say.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're thinking that, or emphasizing the intent behind the comment is really important. Okay. And you had to comment? No? Okay. Now, self-bullying or critical self-talk is language commonly associated with suicide that no one, apart from the person contemplating suicide, experiences. You can't hear what I'm thinking any more than I can hear what you're thinking. And if I believed I could hear what you're thinking, I'd probably have a real problem. But self-bullying is associated with shame, guilt, worthlessness, and hopelessness. Those are some pretty heavy feelings that over time would probably wear a person down, wouldn't you imagine? It's also associated in some cases with eating disorders. Some may develop non-suicidal, self-injurious behaviors such as cutting, burning, scratching, wound picking. Others experience, in some cases, depression. Others may have anxiety. But again, it comes down to a combination of factors. Bullying, self-talk, the depression, all of these items that result or may result in suicidal behavior. And the reason I really want to emphasize that bullying is not a direct cause is because when you take away the bullying, the depression and suicidal ideation people have reported, they don't automatically go away. Those are still there, indicating there's more at play than just the bullying. So, how do you take better care of yourself and stop beating yourself up? How do you stop being your own bully? One of the first things you can do is cultivate awareness. When you start beating yourself up, take note of it. Take note if a particular event may have triggered it. Write out what you were thinking. Describe what you felt in response to those thoughts. And identify what purpose may be behind it. For example, the fear of mistakes that I mentioned earlier. Are you so afraid of mistakes that you're beating yourself up to try and avoid happening or avoid making mistakes? Now, the 3 phases of self-compassion are helpful in cultivating self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-compassion is literally the opposite or flip side of the coin to self-criticism. There are 3 phases to self-compassion, including self-directed kindness, which involves valuing yourself and your strengths, treating yourself with kindness, maintaining perspective in difficult times, and acknowledging that mistakes are a natural part of life and that they are not a measure of your self-worth. The mindfulness portion focuses on the task at hand. It allows thoughts to rise or teaches you how to allow thoughts to rise and just drift away rather than ruminate on them over and over again. If your mind wanders while you're practicing mindfulness, whether you're washing dishes, for example, just focus on washing those dishes. If you find you start worrying about something or planning your day, just refocus on the warm water, the soap bubbles, whatever the case may be. Be patient and understanding with yourself as you try and implement these new techniques because it does take time. That's why they call mindfulness a practice. The common humanity portion really is just that, acknowledging that you don't live in a bubble. You are connected to people. You influence and are influenced by people and systems in society. You are not truly isolated or alone. Just reach out for help if you're struggling, whether it be with bullying, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, or of course, if you're contemplating suicide. Practicing self-compassion in some studies has been linked with promoting mindful awareness, improving self-esteem, lowering anxiety, and protecting against or reducing depression. So again, it's the exact opposite of many of the impacts people with self-critical self-talk experience. In summary, left unaddressed, bullying and the resulting emotional or behavioral factors may contribute to suicidal behavior down the line. The steps to addressing bullying and suicide are similar. It involves education and awareness, compassion, support from family, friends, or professionals, and bystanders who get involved and take action. And if you would like to become an active bystander, or as we call it, a gatekeeper, and learn more about the signs and symptoms of suicide, how to speak with someone who may be feeling suicidal, and how to get them in touch with the proper resources, I encourage you to become a gatekeeper and attend one of our training sessions. We do have 2 this week. We will have more throughout the semester as well. But if you are interested, please just feel free to send us an email at compass@pfw.edu. Does anyone have any more questions? Okay, Brooke.
So I'm going to kind of tie in like what both Shannon and Jenny have talked about, and hopefully it will all come together in a nice bow, right? And some of the things that I might share might seem slightly redundant or that we've gone over like again, but I feel like it's good things as well. And some of what Shannon was just saying that the gatekeeper training is going to be about, I'm going to share a little bit about that right now too, of like kind of what are some of those warning signs and what are some more ideas of things that you can say and that you can do like regarding this. So one of the things I just want to make sure that you understand too, so I'm going to speak a lot more on like what to do as a helper, as a bystander, as a teacher, as a friend, type of thing. So that's who I'm trying to speak to right now a little bit as well. So, but also understanding that, that really the goal of suicide usually is not to die. I know that might seem weird, but most people who have attempted suicide and have spoken and have been interviewed afterwards say, I didn't really want to die. I just want to stop feeling this way. So those that have survived suicide attempts have taught us that like the goal is not to die. The goal is to no longer be in pain. And anybody who attempts suicide or completes suicide is in deep, deep psychological pain. Like nobody who is happy and healthy and doing well is going to attempt or complete suicide. So just understanding that there is a deep longing to no longer be in pain. So the goal of somebody doing that would be to stop the pain. And then on the flip side, if you're a helper, if you're a bystander, if you're a friend, if you're a teacher, a mentor, anybody like that, your goal is to prevent the suicide, right? So to accept that they may be suicidal, so that's part of what we're doing today, is just being comfortable with the word, comfortable with the idea that there's people that feel this way, to validate the depth of it, to understand that that is their desire, is that they no longer want to be in pain, to be non-judgmental and supportive, to be authentically concerned and a true desire to help. And then at the end of the day, it's do anything you can to keep them safe and to get them out of whatever this deep dark hole is that they are in. So just so I do consider suicide kind of being crisis, and crisis management principles apply to if you are in the mode of helping somebody regarding suicide. So be a problem solver, try to stay slightly matter of fact in it, try to model openness and honesty, and try to be consistent too. So however you've been a friend before, continue to be that friend. So again, we kind of touched upon this a little bit, but these would be some important risk factors to be aware of. So these things, if these things are in place, the more somebody has of these, the higher risk they're going to be. So somebody who doesn't have any of these risk factors and says, I'm feeling like ending my life, is going to be a lower risk than somebody who has maybe 3 or 4 of these present for them. Kind of does have an accumulative effect of having multiple things. And so there's risk factors, but then there's also protective factors. So again, like kind of moderating like how high of risk and or as you are thinking as a helper, increasing protective factors around people is also a good thing. So think about how can we increase family and community? How can we help self-esteem? How can we eliminate and keep them safe so that they don't have access to ways to hurt themselves? How to implement some of these protective factors is something to consider as part of things. So again, there will be both talk, behavior, and mood. So these would all be things that fall under those direct versus indirect, verbal versus nonverbal, as Jenny was sharing with us. So there's certain things that they might talk about, certain behaviors that we need to look at, and certain mood. So again, like depression, rage, irritability, humiliation, anxiety, any of those or a combination of those are to pay attention to regarding their mood. Any major behavior changes, reckless behavior, withdrawal behavior, saying people, telling people goodbye, those would be all things. And then again, some of their talk, again, it might be not direct, but it might just be talking about being a burden to others, or, talking about that, or feeling trapped, or feeling like I have no way out, or I don't know, what to do. I'm never going to get out from under this, whatever this is. So the one technique and the one mnemonic that I want to teach you all today, and so this is from American Counseling Association, just a simple way to remember all these warning signs. It's called Is Path Warm? Okay, so if you can, so let's say that you are dealing with somebody who seems very sad, who seems very depressed, a friend who is has come to you and is saying different things, remembering is path warm is a way for you to kind of figure out like how serious is this? Like what do I do with this? You know, is this somebody telling me that they are contemplating suicide? So if you can remember, is path warm? It kind of puts some of these warning signs into this acronym to be able to remember and look for these things. So we're going to kind of go through each of these things to kind of understand like what things you need to be on the lookout for to consider. So again, first one is just, we've talked about this already today, like specific ideation. So it's a desire to kill yourself, a plan to kill yourself, voicing that, being able to do that. So that would obviously be something to take really seriously. Substance abuse is another risk factor and another big warning sign. Are they using more? Did they just start using? Substance abuse is something to pay attention to. Purposelessness, lack of purpose. Does she say that she's lost her purpose? Little or no reason to continue living. I also, I alternated gender specifics on each slide so that trying to be all inclusive with the different genders without being too wordy. So anger would be another sign as well. So uncontrolled anger, rage, expressing aggression in a different way, perceives that other people have wronged them in that way. The feeling of being trapped, like as though there is no way out, like there's no other answer, no choice except living in this misery or ending it, like feeling like those are the only two options, that there's no other paths. And again, remember, if we said like the desire is deep psychological, it's to eliminate deep psychological pain. Somebody who is in deep psychological pain can't see these other paths, right? That you might be able to see like, well, just turn left here instead of right, you know, but they can't see that. They're too stuck in feeling that way. Hopelessness would be another one to really pay attention to. A really negative sense of self, so that self-talk that Shannon talked about too. A really negative sense of self, no type of talk that has anything positive with it, and is not able to see anything hopeful. Again, withdrawing from family and friends, or just indicate that desire to disconnect. Anxiety is a big one as well. So this could either be where anxious, agitated, incapable of relaxing, and then the sleep can go either way. It can either be like not sleeping at all, or you can't wake them up and they seem like they're just sleeping all the time. And then recklessness would be the type of not seeming to think about any consequences of their actions, doing higher and higher risk type behaviors. This could be like jumping on train tracks, jumping in front of cars. This could be the type of substances that they're doing, the type of drinking that they're doing, the type of different activities that they are entering into. And then the mood would be very dramatic type of thing too. So obviously like depression and anxiety and that type of mood, it has a high correlation with suicide, but then also just looking at if there's any extreme mood swings or dramatic shifts. So again, so we're thinking, is path warm, to remember those different things. But now the question is, as a helper, as a friend, as a potential leader, what if the path is warm? Now what do I do? So I remembered this, I kind of thought through this. They have like 3 or 4 things that are true and that are warning signs. So what do I do now? And so, you know, and Jenny even said like, you know, don't do the like, I'll be there if you need me. No, at this point, if you are at the, like you really feel like there's some warning signs here and some serious concern, then you don't leave them alone at that point. And if you do leave them, you hand them off to somebody else at that point. And so it would be at this point a good time to contact a parent, guardian, or significant other of that person. It is the right time to seek out support on campus, and there's lots of different avenues that you can go on campus to be able to do this. Even just talking to a professor, an advisor, or a staff person, anybody. You know, the health clinic. Again, we have student counseling. The dean of students, Compass, as Shannon was talking about, peer health educators. These would all be people that you could seek out support for. And for you, again, like your desire is to be caring, compassionate, non-judgmental, honest, direct. So we do want to be as direct as possible, helpful and accommodating. So the QPR model, I don't know, this is a really popular model of just teaching basic anybody who is interested in understanding the language of suicide and wants to be part of the movement to end suicide, adapts the QPR model. So again, really simple, like that you do question and you take threats seriously, that you do persuade, you do listen and offer hope, and then you do refer, like that idea of like you don't leave them alone, and you do try to get them help somewhere, and you stay with that person. So again, some more ideas. We've kind of talked about this already, but this kind of reiterates or some more ideas of how to do it. So gently leading into the discussion of a sensitive topic. So doing that idea of like sometimes when I've heard about, or even I went to a presentation about this, or I learned in health class, I learned in science class, I learned in my psychology class. I've been reading some things, It seems like that maybe it could have crossed your mind that you're considering suicide. Sometimes when people feel this bad, it's not unusual for them to think, I'd rather be dead than deal with this. Have you ever had thoughts like this? So being direct, asking directly if they've thought about it, does not increase their suicidality. It does not increase their likelihood to therefore do it because you ask them directly about it. It actually could be very much so a relief and like, oh my gosh, somebody noticed, somebody said something. There's quotes and research of people that have attempted and survived who have said, on my way to jump off the bridge, if one person would have asked me if I was okay, I wasn't going to jump. I just wanted one person to notice me and to see that I was in pain, and I was going to not do it if one person would have thought I looked pained. So it can be as simple as recognizing that, saying that, asking that, being able to do that. So again, are you suicidal? How can I help? I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm willing to listen. Can you tell me more about why you're feeling this way? Again, in a non-judgmental way, not like, why are you feeling this way? But like, please help me understand, why are you feeling this way? It's the same question, but the tone and the intent and the compassion makes it totally differently received. Can I do something to remove a burden for you? You seem really overwhelmed. How can I help? Like, could I do something that helps you to be less overwhelmed? Could I help you to go talk to somebody? And again, it seems like we need to keep you safe, and you may need a professional. Can I take you to the clinic, the office, hospital? And again, wellness clinic, counseling center, physician's office, and then the emergency room is also always an option. Calling 911 is always an option if you don't know what else to do. Some other numbers, so there's always a suicide prevention hotline. There's also a crisis text line, so if all you do is text HELP to 741-741. Parkview has their own helpline as well. So doing anything like that, is important. And I guess, one of the things that I do want to reiterate as part of things is that I do think, and hopefully that's part of why you're here, and then you can, if you even just talk to 2 or 3 people about this presentation, right, then we just triple the amount of awareness out there. So from a personal standpoint, I have a cousin who's been suicidal multiple times and who was hospitalized for a while for it, and just recently became suicidal again. And his mom went through all this stuff with him, and yet she still is reaching out to me what do I say? What do I do? And yet she even has this personal experience of already being through this for her, but she still sometimes feels paralyzed or still feels like she doesn't know what to say or what to do. And so I think the more that we can reiterate and help to get the language and to be comfortable and to know who to call and what to do and what questions to ask and then what the safety protocol is, to be able to do that. And so, the most recent one, I said, you can't leave him alone and he needs to see a doctor within the next 24, 48 hours. And so they did. They didn't leave him alone. He's 25, so he's not a kid. They didn't leave him alone and they got him to the doctor within 24 hours. And he wasn't taking his medicine and he was able to work through things, and then they got a counseling appointment, and now we've got him back to that he's doing well again. But he was sending the text messages of saying please don't be mad when I end my life. It's not your fault. I'm so sorry. Don't hate me, but I can't handle it anymore. And they've gone through this with him multiple times, and yet she still is reaching out to me what do I say again? Where do I go again? And so, which is good though. She at least did something. She reached out to me, and then I'm able to, to kind of help her some of those steps. But even people who have experienced this still sometimes act forget or not sure what to do. So These are all different. There's lots of different ways, but not leaving them alone and connecting them with somebody who is an expert, who is able to do something is also always a great step. Don't leave them alone. Find somebody who can truly help them. Again, just here on campus, we do have the Student Assistance Program that's right here in Walb. And then again, like our Center for Healthy Living would be a stop. Like, you know, those nurses there or people there would be willing to at least know what to do next, or at least to assess, or even to offer some support. And then the Community Counseling Center, ours is only by appointment, so we don't deal with crisis situations, but we could definitely get you into a counseling relationship that's ongoing counseling as part of things. Any questions or comments for me or for any of the rest of our speakers about what we've shared today?
I wonder if, you know, is the rate of suicide changing over time?
Is the rate of suicide changing over time? I actually did look that up. I decided not to, I just looked it up just in case anybody asks about the stats of suicide. But I do think, because this one just tells like, I said I don't want to like misquote anything as to whether it really has increased or not increased or whatnot. I believe that they say that it's on the increase, but I can't see I just looked at the actual. I mean, right now it's saying that 800,000 people die by suicide in the world each year, which is ongoing 1 death per 40 seconds, and it's the second leading cause of death in the world for those aged 15 to 24. But this one doesn't say whether it's increased. But I know that like the different ones that I've heard, like I know that it has considered to be on the increase. So I don't know if anybody else is up on their statistics about that. I know that it has been considered even like, you know, one of our health crises right now, as far as like where it's at. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Well, I hope that you've at least learned something today about different aspects of the language of suicide, different aspects about bullying and suicide, different things that you can do as a helper and recognizing warning signs. Again, if you yourself are struggling in this way at all, if you're experiencing feelings of depression, anxiety, feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, these are all things that entering into a therapeutic relationship with a therapist or a counselor, or speaking with your doctor even about it, is definitely a great first step. Some of those things that were shared about that self-talk aspect of things, like being in a relationship with a counselor, like can help you to help you to reveal and become aware of that self-talk, whether it is negative and how to replace it and how to work through that in a different way. There are a lot of resources here on campus, and the resource fair is tomorrow, so that's something to also pay attention to, is the resource fair and all the different ways that we are trying to enhance student wellness here on campus. So, Judy, do you have anything else?
No, thanks so much for coming today. I really, really appreciate you being here. And as Brooke said, we hope that you have learned something that you might be able to apply to your life personally, and potentially you've learned something that you might be able to do to help a friend or help a family member.